Hello and welcome to the Hands Up If You're Human podcast, an ongoing series of conversations dedicated to exploring and celebrating the messy reality of being human. The truth is, there is nothing we can say, do, think, feel, or experience that isn't 100% human. So it's time to drop the shame and the guilt, embrace everything that we are, and start creating a life we really want to live. My name is Wyndham, I am the Blueprint Coach, and today I am joined by a very special guest. Clinical nutritionist, she holds a master's degree in counselling and psychotherapy. She's a qualified masseuse, a qualified fitness trainer, qualified life coach, an integrated health practitioner for more than 30 years, and absolutely passionately advocates for natural healing. She is also the author of 2 books, Why Eating Less and Exercising More Makes You Fat, and her latest book, Eat Your Brain Happy. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Stephanie Moore.
Thank you, Wyndham.
How are you?
Really good, really good. This time of year is my time of year. Coming alive out of winter.
Yeah.
It's warming up.
And the last couple of days specifically have been
Magic.
glorious.
Magic.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you very much for sparing me the time to come on.
Pleasure.
First question I ask everybody is, what is missing from that list?
Oh, perpetual student.
Mm-hmm.
Can't stop learning. Always curious. Kind of amused by people who say they get bored. So yes, love to learn. An HSP,
Which is?
highly sensitive person.
Okay.
So there is a set criteria for that condition, diagnosis, type of person. I guess
It's funny
it's
that
being
it's
an empath.
called a condition.
Yeah, well, it's a great condition.
Yeah, I guess it's a condition of being a
Human.
Yeah.
Apparently 20-ish% of the human population recognize themselves as that. It comes with its challenges because you're very permeable, and I'm not very good at protecting myself from the things that I am particularly sensitive to. HSPs tend to have their own areas of sensitivity rather than being sensitive to everything.
Okay.
And it was only in the fairly recent years that I've come to understand that not everybody goes through life experiencing the level of feelings that I do.
Right.
So it explains a lot about my struggles when I was younger. And it's been kind of nice to know that. It doesn't really change very much, but I understand that my filters around the world and world experiences are a bit different. So it's what makes me a good therapist.
Mm.
And I think a lot of therapists are probably HSPs. But with that comes the risk of being utterly exhausted by other people's pain.
Yeah. Wow. And so, do you mind sharing what your HSP
Oh, no,
focuses around?
not at all. Some very sort of mundane things like noise. Kind of ironic being married to a musician.
I don't kid. For people who are listening or watching, Stephanie is married to Stefan Rettenbacher, who was on last week's episode.
Yes. And not that I would like to label his music noise. I think he might get a little bit upset by that. But you know, I was the child hiding under the table when there was a party going on because I hated all the noise, and was taken to an airport to welcome somebody and was freaked out by airplanes when I was quite young. And loud noise overwhelms me quite easily. So being in crowds is difficult.
Yeah.
And I've become worse as I've got older. Many HSPs buy into sort of the world suffering of pain on a human level.
Yeah.
I don't so much, which is why I can be a therapist and not be too broken by the experience. But my pain is in sort of Mother Nature's pain, and particularly animal suffering. I wanted to be a vet growing up. I really thought I would be a vet until I went and worked at a vet's and realized that seeing animals in pain was so overwhelming to me that I was absolutely hopeless. There was no way I would be good at that job. So have gone actually a safer route in working with human pain because I can't deal with animal pain.
Interesting. Thank you.
Pleasure. What else? I can be very misanthropic. I am definitely a misanthrope, selectively. I pull myself out of that. I can get very angry and very disillusioned with human beings. It's sort of jaded by them sometimes.
And how do you pull yourself up? Because that for me is if I reflect back on me when I was younger, I'd just get enraged by people. Part of that I realised was my own certainty. And I no longer have that because I've worked through a lot of stuff and have a process and all those kind of things. So how do you pull yourself out of that now?
Partly avoidance, just not allowing myself to be immersed in, particularly at the moment with what's going on in the world, the sort of geopolitics and the bullying and the meanness, and so keep the focus small. And what can I do?
Yeah.
And the people around me that I choose to spend time with are good people and lovely people and kind people, and that reminds me that not all human beings are deeply flawed and nasty. We're all pretty flawed, but we can choose to be better. And I actually have to put quite a lot of effort into that,
right?
To not be drawn down by our failings as human beings. And there's a sort of deep sense in me that Mother Nature is going to get us back. It's inevitable. We are screwing things up at such a rapid pace, and she's just laughing, going, "Come on, bring it on! I'm just going to wipe you all out soon." And we deserve it. That's kind of where I go.
Right.
That's
Right.
quite often. So yeah, so a bit of a misanthrope. That's about it, really.
Very good. Like your comment about avoidance, I think is really I was about to say is really interesting, isn't it? I was talking to my brother last week, and his first comment was, "You should rename your podcast to." It's interesting, isn't it? Because I say it all the time, but it is interesting.
Yeah.
That avoidance piece is, again, if I reflect on my life, I was avoiding everything. I was avoiding owning my own part in everything. I was avoiding accountability. I was avoiding. And now you can end up in a place where, well, I want to embrace ownership and responsibility and accountability and create what I want. There's a lot to do in that. It can be really heavy. So whereas I'm not avoiding most of the time, there are still times where it's like, actually, you know what? I recognize I need to avoid this for a time being, just to recharge my batteries and when I get back to
it's not permanent.
an equilibrium. It's a choice rather than a blind avoidance.
Yeah, and I think also letting go of, what we can change, what we can't change, and being present with where you are and what's good about it, and that's that curiosity thing too, that it keeps getting interesting, staying interesting, things keep changing, there is no constant, and all that's okay, even though I am such a control freak on so many levels. I don't want that to be true sometimes, but there is a real freedom in letting go of that. It's understanding how to let go of that, and that's very much where I sort of am with my work at the moment. Yeah, the whole control thing.
Which is a nice link into this season is all about finding your freedom. What does that mean to you?
To me, it's such an interesting question because it manifests in so many ways. The sort of headline for me is understanding that my thoughts are not me.
Yeah.
And people rail against that because that doesn't make sense. If they're in my head, then how are they not me? And I believe profoundly they're not me, and that I have a choice to go with those thoughts or not. I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate.
I do, yeah.
And he talks about this something like, he says, freedom is in the ability to pause. He says it's subtle. Human freedom is subtle. I love that. And it's about being able to pause between stimulus and action. And my interpretation of that for me is the ability to pause between a thought and a reaction. and understanding that much of my thinking, or much of my teen adulthood into my mid-30s possibly, was so rigid because I had grown up in a framework of not being allowed to express feelings. And again, this is a lot that Gabor Mate talks about, that suppression, that not having parents that acknowledge feelings or allow feelings. And by the way, this is not a poor me story. My childhood was perfectly lovely, but it was emotionally retarded on so many levels. But I didn't know that because I didn't know any difference. And I grew up literally without having a vocabulary for feelings. It's kind of ironic that I trained to be a psychotherapist, where one expects to have a vocabulary to help other people express those feelings. And I didn't actually learn much then. That wasn't where I got over it. And as part of a master's degree as a training to be a psychotherapist, one is in therapy. That didn't help very much because my therapist just colluded with my sort of issues and allowed me to be all poor me about it. I mean, it was so self-indulgent. It was so, like just reinforcing my story that it'd all been a bit shitty, and anyway, that was a long time ago. But the process of finding freedom to talk about my feelings, understanding feelings, what I have had to learn is getting into my body.
Right.
And again, there's an irony in that because I love the human body. I'm fascinated by it. My first degree was as a performer. The irony of that is mad when I throw into the mix that I was probably clinically body dysmorphic and painfully, acutely, and cripplingly self-conscious about my body. And yet I chose to go on stage and wear, skimpy dance wear, or I exposed myself on so many levels, and yet the struggle was stifling and awful and painful and crippling. So I don't understand that.
Oh, okay. I was about to ask, do you understand what was driving, what you were looking for?
Still don't. I am amazed that I did that, and I'm amazed that I got through it. I'm staggered that I chose to do that. I was on the trajectory to become a vet. That was the plan. And then suddenly, the O-level time, decide I want to be an actress. So then went that route. And then I got through an audition at one of the only universities that were doing a performing arts degree, which was hugely competitive. That I had the gumption, the balls, the ability, the talent at the time to get into that course amazes me, when inside I was just absolutely crippled with self-doubt. Amazes me. Do not understand that part of me at all.
And I think that, what am I trying to say? I think whilst it's not common, that direct part, I did a drama and theatre degree, and it was not a performance. It was not a focus on the performance. It was a degree rather than an acting degree. And still, the number of people that I went to uni with who had a similar kind of self-doubt. I know from some of them it was definitely a method for them to find approval or validation or anything like that. But the process was terrifying. I find it fascinating because we can do remarkable things even in the face of our terror.
Almost because of the face of our terror.
And maybe because of the face of it. But we have this, I spent a long time afraid of my fear. And it absolutely stopped me doing things. And then there were times when, because of the fear I felt, I pushed through.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know what determines the difference. So I'm sort of impressed that I survived it, but it took quite a lot out of me, I think. But coming back to the body, yes, so I have lived in my head for an awfully long time. That was the safe place to be. Was very driven to intellectualize everything. Because I had no capacity to feel stuff, I had to learn stuff to get through and navigate my teens, which were particularly difficult. And yet through this degree, using my physical body, training to use my physical body and other people's bodies, and went from that degree to doing all the training that I did as a physical therapist and doing body work, and just love it. And if I were to have to name the one thing that I know that I am truly exceptionally good at, it's body work. And somehow my hands know what to do without my head getting involved. And it's so freeing.
Right.
And I sort of miss it now. I stopped for various reasons. I will go back to it, but probably on dogs, not humans. But for 20 odd years, I had a very busy massage practice in London. And my hands did things that I didn't know they should do. They went to places, worked on, released. I can remember doing two different courses of two completely different techniques, and teachers getting a bit pissy with me because like, oh, I see, I don't want to be the teacher, kind of like this real resentment. And that was difficult too, because I'm like, I'm sorry,
trying to do anything.
no, it's a lovely feeling.
Yeah.
So we've kind of meandered here.
Yes, that being someone who, when you were younger, there was an intellectualization and a kind of a dominance of the mind. And I think what I'm getting, and certainly what my experience was, the boundaries that then come into place are, well, there's a seeking to understand, to understand the component parts, and it's a methodical thing, therefore I should be able to understand it. And if I can't, there's some rejection that's going to happen because I'm in my head.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're talking about having this ability to not intellectualize this innate skill you have with your hands. Were you aware of the seeming contradiction in that at the time?
Not at the time, no, not at all. Not at all. I think it probably saved me because it gave me a means of employ. I've always been self-employed, which in itself is interesting for someone who's such a control freak. I would never allow somebody to tell me what to do. I've always been my own boss. So I earned good money doing it, and sort of really enjoyed it and got a lot from it, but didn't appreciate the value of it until I stopped doing it. I don't know, it sort of found me. I'm looking back at the things I've done through my professional life. There was never a plan. It all just seemed to happen. And again, that's interesting when I think of myself being control freak, but actually I didn't have a plan of any kind ever.
Yeah.
And so the various things I've done and places that I've ended up and qualifications that I got and positions that I've been able to take professionally, Stefan, husband, would say it's not luck. I feel lucky, but he says there might be a tiny element of luck, but you make your own luck kind of thing. And I think maybe that's true, but it was never conscious then. That's the difference. It was a never conscious plan.
Yeah.
So, it's intriguing.
Yeah, that whole luck, I'm really focused on the language that people I work with use, what everybody uses, particularly people I work with. And it's almost like this, we don't consider our language very much. A lot of it is automatic. And I think there are things that we are lucky. So I'm lucky I was born to the parents I was born to. I was lucky they were very pro-education, so I'm an educated person as a result. I'm lucky that they loved me. All those things. I've got no input into that. That's outright luck. The fact my life is where it is good fortune. Because I've made decisions.
I like that distinction.
There's agency in that. and I recognize that it could have been something different. So I'm fortunate that those opportunities have come my way.
Yeah.
You were saying as a control freak,
Mm-hmm.
you have a career that has seemingly evolved organically.
Very much so.
So what are the elements you control? If you allow things to unfold and you have this
Right.
these gifts that you don't understand,
Yeah.
where are the control
Yeah.
elements?
Well, okay, this sort of maybe changes gear a little bit. But I have imposed huge amounts of control over my physical self.
Mhm.
And this leads very nicely, I can see now in my older years, back into that whole history of living in my head. So this sort of anguish that I went through my teens and my 20s of being very disconnected with my body, not having a healthy relationship with my body, all of this sort of stuff. I was trying to manage it. I was asserting great control through rules that I had around what was okay and what was not okay, particularly around diet, around exercise. I'm good at being good. I am really good at being good. I need no external impetus. If I have decided something has to happen, it will happen.
Okay.
And that's dangerous when you're pursuing something that isn't very helpful. So we're talking 80s now, the 1980s, into the 1990s, and my will was to be very slim, thin probably actually, and fit and vital and super healthy. And at that time, the general wisdom was low fat is best, more exercise is better. So low calorie, low fat, and then for some of those reasons, and certainly some to a degree control reasons, and some ethical reasons, I was a vegan. So I was a vegan, low fat, over exerciser, running a business with my then husband, not my now husband, and all of that led to me absolutely denying everything that my body was telling me was right and wrong, and just sticking to the rules. So I was getting sicker and sicker, less and less able to cope with the demands of my life. I'm only in my 20s, should have been thriving. Getting stricter and stricter around these rules, more and more frustrated about them, and restricting even more, exercising even more, this perpetual cycle of really self-punishment and frustration and shame, so much shame. Shame is such a toxic emotion. And all of this, and then pretending on the surface that everything was absolutely fine and not talking to anybody about this struggle until my body broke, which was inevitable, really. And then everything changed and left the husband and allowed myself to start learning about my body for the first time. And that was a long process, but that wasn't until my late 20s that I was beginning to realize how detached I was from my body.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned I'm good at being good, and as soon as you said it, I was thinking, okay, who's defining good? And then you mentioned that the kind of prevailing idea at the time was low calorie, low fat, high exercise. How has that, because I would assume you're still good at being good.
Oh yeah.
So you evidently have a will that you can impose.
Yeah. It's very self-motivated.
Yeah. So where does you get to your late 20s, your body finally reaches the point where it goes, we're not doing this anymore. What happens then, and how do you then adapt, adjust, evolve what the meaning of good is?
Some luck to a degree, where I was in America doing a series of courses with Tony Robbins, American sort of guru type. very impressive in what he does, quite dictatorial, particularly back then, and vegan. The groups he was running, over 1,000 people per weekend, per week. We did various things over there in America with him. Vegan, sleep deprivation. So on an already exhausted body, this was just great for me.
Yeah.
You know, doing extreme physical activities, climbing poles, and sort of, you know, trusting your partner as the lines get wider and wider apart, and you're leaning in on each other, trusting each other, and you're way up, and all of these sorts of things. So lots of adrenaline, massive sleep deprivation, minimal food, all of which was vegan, on an already tired. We came out of that experience, and I somehow knew I had to leave my husband.
Mm.
In these trainings, they separate you if you're there with a loved one or a significant person. So I hadn't seen him for days.
Mm.
And when the course finished and we were coming back together, he was like, my God, that was amazing, wasn't it? Just made me realize our life is so perfect and we're so perfect. And like, there's nothing I would change. And everything's so great. And I'm like, okay, well, I actually want a divorce.
Wow.
And that changed so much about me then, because it felt brave.
Mm.
It almost felt foolish, but it was necessary. Didn't really understand why, but knew it had to happen. Then had some years of not trying to keep up and prove and do. And I was married to a man, he was sweet, but he was a pathological liar. And one of those people that has to be right about everything and pretends to know everything.
Right.
And he was so good at that he convinced himself and therefore convinced people around him. And why Stefan and I are so good together. He asks why all the time.
Yeah.
He never has to pretend that he has all the answers.
Yeah.
And his curiosity and his sort of wide-eyed innocence about things is so refreshing when you've been married to somebody who constantly knows better. To the point of it being embarrassing, because he's talking to experts, but he's telling them how it should be. So you can't learn from someone like that.
Yeah.
And it's stifling. And I always felt inadequate around that because, oh my gosh, you're so knowledgeable and I'm so not knowledgeable. And that really was not good for my sense of self and independence and confidence. So getting out of that at the same time, so in America, said I want a divorce, find myself in San Francisco, and I'm walking down the high street past a restaurant called the Stinking Rose, where they put garlic in everything, including ice cream. And I smelt 40 clove chicken, having not eaten any animal products for way over 10 years. And it was just the right time, right place, right everything. Every cell in my body said, you need to eat that. So I did.
Okay.
And I felt better.
Yeah. So it sounds like almost a surrender of the shoulds.
It was the moment when I stopped living in my head and abiding by my intellectual rules.
Yeah.
And allowed a feeling to control, a feeling to guide me as to what to do.
Because you said in two senses there, because you said you didn't necessarily know all the details about why it was important that you moved on from your then husband, and the smell of 40 clove chicken, your body just went, yes, let's have some of that.
I think that's a good idea. Yes.
That's for me, that these are all things that I mean, they're not directly things I'm dealing with, but the idea of intellectualization and living in our heads, working as hard as we can to understand, to kind of strip away the magic and the uncertainty and kind of go, no, I need to understand. That's the upbringing I had. Or certainly the place I got to as a result of my upbringing was prioritization of our intellect.
Yeah.
And you're right, a complete disconnection from the body. And it's only been very recently that I've become aware of this idea that talking about myself in component parts. So there's my mind, there's my heart, there's my soul, there's my body, as if they're not all the same thing. It's a really...
It's such a Western construct, and it frustrates me with modern medicine, and I'm not knocking it, because goodness knows if I'm in acute health crisis, if I've had an accident, if I've got acute infection, I'm going to the hospital and taking everything they give me.
Yeah.
However, our management of chronic conditions, which are largely lifestyle driven, is woeful, because we have such specialists in such tiny areas of the body. We don't just have heart specialists, we have specialists of sections of the heart. And my world and my way of working with people health-wise is to look at the whole body system. And that brings us perfectly back to where my life changed, is understanding how it all connects, and understanding that these rules that I had imposed on myself that had made me so ill, I had given myself type 2 diabetes at 28. And that condition meant that I couldn't think straight. If your blood glucose is so dysregulated, if your body is on fire, which it is when you've got massive surges of glucose in your bloodstream, which can inflame your brain, never mind your body, and you're going through these crises of huge energy crashes and massive food cravings that you're then willfully trying to control, but your body is desperate to be fueled. All of these are crisis moments time and time again throughout a day. When I came to understand all of this and change the way I behaved around exercise and food, so my body healed, I was able to think differently. I was able to manage the anxiety, the depression, the fear, all that negativity that I used to swim in my head. I had the tools, the capacity, the health to manage better, to then have the energy and curiosity to work it all out more. But while your body is on fire, for whatever health reason that might be, and in my case it was diabetes, there was no way I was ever going to do that. I work a lot with eating disorders. You can't help somebody overcome those issues, whatever they may be, while their brain is deprived of fuel or dysregulated in some other way. And then coming back to what you were saying about living in your head and finding answers, sort of using one's intellect and education to try and find answers to things. I did my master's as a psychotherapist. I did my degree in nutritional medicine. Still didn't get the answers I was looking for. And it's only through practice and curiosity and reading around it and working on myself and working with hundreds of people that then things sort of started to slot together. And to cut a very long story short around the way I work, what was either working with the emotion and the mind, or working with the diet, or working with exercise, understanding how they all interconnect so profoundly, means that all these different distinct disciplines that I have trained in now serve as a brilliant way for me to work with people. And I never go into it thinking I'm only going to work with your diet today, or I'm only going to talk about your exercise program today, because I don't know what's coming. And in particular, the influence of the gut microbes, or the human microbiome, of which there are many, and how they change your physiology, and that physiology changes how your brain works, which means it changes how your mind works, which then changes how you perceive the world and how you integrate your thoughts into your body, and give you the space to pause, coming back to gabor mate, that pause between a thought and a reaction or a response. And that's the freedom. And that is huge. Is this the truth? Where did that thought come from? Is it useful? How do I know that's true? Where's the evidence that I'm shit at this, or whatever, head talking? Where's the evidence? Do I want that to be true? I could change it if I want to. just because I grew up miserable because my family didn't understand me, just because I had no outlet for my emotions and I was told to pull myself together and stop crying and be brave, and doesn't mean I have to go through life feeling all embittered and ruined, but having the health to have the space to pause between my thoughts and then my response is huge.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a powerful thing, because I think there are so many parallels in the kind of the theory as you've described it, that kind of, it's almost the cliche, healthy body, healthy mind. It's absolutely true. And in order to create the capacity to pause requires us to make some kind of intervention, because, you know, I work with the blueprint philosophy, and in that, our blueprints are studied with thoughts and beliefs. And the thought and belief and the truth, in inverted commas, is essentially a stimulus instantly connected to a reaction. And all we're doing, and we do not think.
Yeah.
Stimulus comes in.
Yeah.
It runs through our blueprint. Yeah. Is there a truth or a belief in our blueprint that is triggered by this? If so, this is the reaction. Right. It happens without our intervention. And there's no truth in any of them. Well, absolute truths. I mean, where are you going to find those? So having the ability to recognize, I don't do it through the holistic approach you do. So it is more work, because it happened. You can only do it retrospectively to begin with, because that automation is so intense.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself time afterwards. You have to pause after and go, oh, I did that thing.
Yeah.
Did it help me?
Yeah.
Did it serve me?
Yeah.
And then you start bringing your awareness closer to the moment.
And there comes a point where it becomes more natural to do that. And it takes time.
Absolutely, it takes time. And there comes a point where you can see it come.
But it's not linear. So depending on what's been going on, how much sleep you had, things you're grappling with, you can go right back there and like, oh, I did it again.
I think of it like our blueprints are like really strong elastic bands. And so the old blueprint we're trying to overwrite, we're in the middle of it and we're holding it at bay. And there are some times when we're tired, when we're, whatever it might be, where we lack the strength and it snaps back.
Nice analogy,
If we hold it long enough, like all elastic, it exceeds its elasticity and it can no longer snap back. But recognizing it's going to snap back during the process of, I think, is really, really important. But you also spoke about linearity and the length of your journey. And so the way you help people now is through all the skills and the interconnectedness of the things you've learned over, you know, I said in the introduction, more than 30 years in this kind of holistic,
being with people and working with bodies,
integrated health. It's I think it's so important for everybody to recognize there is no solution that is a single step to the perfect answer. It just doesn't work that way.
No, if only. But nowhere near, and being sort of excited, open to that and excited by it rather than frustrated by it, because as the sort of layers peel away, as I begin to understand more and more about myself, and that's okay, this helps, but this doesn't help, and it just exposes more to work on, be curious about, delve into. But I'm kind of okay with that now, that, you know, I'm a finisher completer, ridiculous finisher completer, and working to not be quite so much like that, because this is never going to end. And so being curious about it and open to it and trying to enjoy the ride is important, but it is hard, because I kind of want to get it tied up. I'm sorted now. Next.
I think it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I constantly find myself with my mind going, this is hard. And then there's that part of my mind that, or maybe it's my soul actually, that's coming through saying, Yeah.
Mhm,
What did
mhm. So it's gonna
what
be
did you expect? Well, I rather hoped it would be not hard. Oh no, that's not a thing.
not
There
a
is
thing.
there are periods, and I'm not saying our life is constantly hard, but we cannot avoid challenge. Challenge is going to either come for us, or we are going to go and seek it. And if we go seeking it, then there's a level of controlling
Yeah,
what we can
yeah.
control,
Yeah,
as opposed to just stuff building up and then coming to get us.
yeah. Yeah, I was speaking with, who was that? Oh, I went to my chiropractor the other day, and she sort of just working away on my back, and then she says, "What do you think about humans?"
Wow.
I'm like, okay, neck hurts. Can we just focus on the job in hand? And I sort of didn't say very much, and then she said, "You know what I mean, don't you? Like, what's going on here?" And I'm just lying there on the couch thinking, that's an extraordinary question. And how do I answer that? And we sort of meandered around the subject a little bit. And then she started talking about, which is always the way, isn't it? When someone asks a question, it's because they want to talk about it or
Yeah.
you know, say their thing. How she has overcome her fear of death. And so that was such a refreshing conversation to have with somebody that I don't know particularly well, but we just decided to delve right in. And in her accepting, believing in the sense of reincarnation and really owning that rather than just wanting to believe in it, really believing it,
Yeah.
it has freed her up from her fear of death. And then we went into this lovely conversation about what all that means, and do we know that, and how do we know that, and what does that actually mean? And oh yeah, there's that feeling when you meet somebody like, they're a wise soul, like they've got knowledge beyond their years. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if we truly believe that, that means they've been around before, and there's no harm in that belief at all. In fact, it's a huge comfort. I have no religion. I wasn't raised at all religious. I envy people who have a deep belief, so much so that they are never questioning and have a sense that there is something after life, that they are going to be taken care of, that they go somewhere wonderful, because it takes away the inevitable fear of what's going to happen to us all.
Yeah.
I love the idea of reincarnation and karma, meaning it's either a better or worse life, depending on how we've chosen to live, because I hope it incentivizes people to be kind, because if nothing else, we should be kind, and I truly believe that. But I'm not seeing that playing out in a lot of people, hence my misanthropic attitude to human beings. But the idea that we come back to keep learning means that, you know, this lifetime we're not going to get through it, and how many more lifetimes have we got left to work it all out? There's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Well, it was interesting. Your chiropractor saying no longer afraid of death because they've moved it from a concept that they'd like to an embodied sense of knowing. That is almost as it, you know, it ties loosely, but still ties to your experience in San Francisco, an embodied moment where we listen to a deeper voice, and then it's always going to come bouncing up into our head again, and our conditioned mind kind of going, kind of sounds like bullshit. Where are we going to be with this? And the requirement to work with it. So if we go back to your story about when you San Francisco 40 clove chicken, was it then okay, now I'm no longer vegan, or was it again? Oh, it was.
Yep, it was.
I mean, I appreciate if you eat chicken, you're no longer vegan. I do understand that.
Because of, but from that point onwards, yes.
Right.
Confirmation bias is a powerful thing, and I'm very prone to that, so I have to watch myself with that. At the time, and again, it was kind of serendipitous, books were starting to come out. One was called Protein Power. There was another one that came out that was beginning to question the validity, the philosophy of a low-fat diet being beneficial. And it was particularly happening in America, and I happened to be in America. So I was just absorbing all of this stuff. So having had my 14 clove chicken moment, I then found clever people writing books telling me that what I had just experienced was okay, and not only okay, but actually good for me. So now I had a new trajectory of what good meant.
Yeah, okay.
And it served me, because I work a lot in metabolic health, which is around the way the body uses energy. Back then I didn't have that knowledge, but that's what was going on with me. My energy use was all messed up through the diabetes. And in changing my diet and no longer being a low-fat vegan, my body could heal metabolically, so my energy sorted itself out, my energy use. So the craving stopped, the feeling of being out of control of food, which was very shame-based, as well as just being a horrible experience. Every 2 hours I was crashing and needed to eat. So suddenly I was feeling okay about my body again, my physiology again, that I was okay, that I was mending, I was getting stronger, and my brain was starting to work better, no surprise. In hindsight now, I understand it all on an intellectual level much better, but then because I didn't have all the knowledge that I have now, it was much more intuitive and just instinctive, and trusting something bigger than myself, and that there was sort of backup information coming my way that allowed me to trust in it a bit more. It was huge. Oh, it was from extreme one end to extreme other end, which was extraordinary.
Yeah, it's an example, certainly for me, of holding our certainties lightly.
Nice, yes.
Because all this kind of literature and research showing low calorie, low fat, high exercise, this is good for you. And then actually that might be the prevailing wind, but then somebody else comes on and goes, well, we've done a bit of research in this area and we don't think that's true. We think this is a healthy way to approach it. And even just that in itself says, okay, so whatever we think we know now has to be taken in the context of our ability to evolve, how we look at things, what we look at, how we measure them, how we observe them, all those different things, which fundamentally changes our perspective.
Yeah.
So being the eternal student that you are, is it Cherry Orchard that Trofimov, Anton Chekhov's play, is an eternal student?
Oh, okay.
When anybody says that,
okay,
Trofimov comes to them.
Trofimov.
For all you theatre geeks out there. But that whole idea of, if we stop learning, if we hold those certainties too tightly, they are the absolute outer limit of what is possible for us. And we end up in this, I guess, demanding people to conform to our belief because it's so terrible.
Yes, to let go of.
Yeah.
Yes, and there is a real freedom in being open to not being all knowing and to know that it's likely going to change.
Yeah.
And I've seen that incredibly in my field of human physiology and anatomy, and the understanding that's changed even in the last 15 years. It's been massive as we are understanding, and still only really at the beginning of really truly understanding how the human microbiome, which is non-human and outnumbers our human cells at least by 10, these non-human organisms are dictating how we feel, how we respond, how we sleep, how our brain chemistry is balanced, and that's changed just in 10 years, 15 years.
So for someone with very, very limited knowledge, what do you mean by non-human? I think I know, but just so.
Oh, sorry. So the microbiome, of which there are many in the body, these are bacterial or other microbial organisms that are not of human origin.
Yeah.
And they live on us, and they live in us, and they communicate with each other, and they communicate with our own cells. And then within our cells are tiny little organelles. So within a cell, there are organelles that are non-human, that communicate with and are communicated to by the microbiomes around the body. And when you begin to even touch on that and what that means, that these trillions, literally 100 trillion plus microbes influence our genetic expression, our energy, our brain chemistry, our likes and dislikes, our hungers, then suddenly it changes everything about what we do, how we do, and what we're really about. And it's wonderful and it's incredibly freeing. And I find it motivating, and I think a lot of people I work with find it motivating to want to care for these organisms and to give them what they need so they can look after us, because that's what they do if they're in good shape.
And so is this the topic of your latest book, Eat Your Brain Happy?
It is, yes, the deep premise of the book is an understanding of how the choices that we make in our diet and lifestyle impact the microbes that live on us and in us, that then affect how our brain is wired, the balance of chemistry, for example, tryptophan, an amino acid which comes from protein. So we get it from food, goes up to the brain from our digestive system, and depending on numerous factors to do with how inflamed we are, which is to do with our blood sugar and other things that we might or might not be doing in our diet and lifestyle, how stressed we are, these sort of things, that little amino acid, this neutral little amino acid, which can go down a route of serotonin, happy brain chemical, not just happy brain chemical, but confident brain chemical, sense of place chemical in the brain, also becomes melatonin, which is our sleep chemical, and sleep helps us cope with pretty much everything. So tryptophan can go that lovely route, or it can go a anxiety route, goes into something called glutamic acid, which is aggravating and angsty. And so this one little molecule from food can go conversely, depending on a whole bunch of other things of the state of our body, to do with how we live, how much sleep we get, how much stress we have, what food we're eating, and how our microbes, our gut microbes, are sending up that information and what route they're sending it down. That's just one tiny example of a gazillion things that are going on all the time. So then the desire to help those good pathways as opposed to those not so helpful pathways through simple things that we can be doing day to day is really what the book is about. Simple, for something really complicated. And when people are prone to, as I was, anxiety, overwhelm, depression, just that sort of constant self-doubt, negativity, striving, looking for external verification because nothing about me was good enough, that is an exhausting process to go down. And then realizing no amount of therapy was going to help that until I got my body well balanced and healthy. And suddenly the whole conversation about the gut microbes is going on, and oh my goodness, they could do what with my brain? Oh, okay, well, I might just take care of them a little bit better then.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Oh, wow. Yes, it is. It's interesting, isn't it? New types of podcast. That you said that there was no way, no amount of therapy was going to help if or unless you took care of the body, and because it is, like we were saying earlier, there's only a conceptual distinction between the component parts of us with this single thing going about the place. And having the awareness to say, actually, this is a multi-front piece of work that I need to do, one of which is take care of my diet and my health and blah, blah, blah. Then there's okay, let's see how that impacts how I think, how I can think. Then maybe it's time to go looking for a bit of the traumatic events or anything like that. But I think it's a brilliant example of there's no silver bullet. There's no one move that's there's no single thing you can do that is going to resolve all of your problems. There are loads of things you can do. and incrementally they build to a much better overall outcome.
Problem with that for many people is that they want that silver bullet because they're time poor, they're frustrated, they're desperate,
And we're
haven't got the
conditioned into
wherewithal.
thinking it's possible.
More and more so. And so I'm often asked, well, what supplement should I take to fix this?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you're not sleeping and la 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 and la 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 and you're living on the okay, let's get the basics in place.
Yeah.
Supplements will never, ever take the place of good food. Oh yeah, but I can't be bothered to cook and I've got time and I love my takeaways, la la la. So we have to find, okay, well, we have to find a compromise here, because yeah, there are some supplements that might be helpful, but if you haven't got the basics in place, no amount of supplements are helpful. And that takes work and time, and people really rail against that. The people I get the best results from are the people who are so sick and so broken that they just tell me what to do. I'm ready now. I want to get to people before they get to fully death's door, and there's something about the human condition that stops us doing that.
Yeah, it's I use the analogy of, for too long we're essentially rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and at some point we have to zoom out and go, the ship is going down.
Yes. Yeah.
Shifting this chair isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And I remember a client of mine asking me, he's got 2 young kids, and he said, is it just a foregone conclusion that my kids are going to have to do this work as well? And it was like, well, you're going a long way to helping them reduce it by you doing the work, because you will pass on less without knowing it. And yeah, probably. Yeah, they're gonna have to do some because of look at the world they're growing up in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a real shame. I only started changing my life when I felt I had bottomed out. Yeah. And it's like,
but you would have known, you knew you were going down. For how long?
15 years.
Oh boy.
I knew I was fundamentally out of place in certain areas of my life, almost instantly. Boy. And then
you hung on because
I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of external judgment, afraid of internal judgment. There was just a lot of fear keeping me trapped. Afraid I have had and still do struggle with this idea I should be better than I think I am. And I don't know, I'm not 100% sure where that comes from. I could have a hazard a guess, but it's to some degree irrelevant where it comes from. Yeah. I'm aware of it and therefore can start to deal with it when it comes up. But it is this, what are my definitions of success and all those things? And I lacked the courage to break out of the molds I thought I was supposed to be in, until I essentially had an emotional breakdown, and it was like, oh, I cannot keep doing this. So what am I going to do? Yeah. So it had to get bad enough. Had to get bad enough, yeah. Yeah, and I think for a lot of us, certainly for me, productivity, being productive, I'm a doer. Yeah. I'm super practical. I get shit done, and it's certainly largely learned behavior, I think, from my family environment. But being productive makes me feel good, and getting that external validation. Look, what a hard-working girl you are. Well done, you. And it's odd because that wasn't explicit at home. My brother and elder brother and sister couldn't really be bothered at school. I didn't really care. Didn't really do that well. To not thrive, to not be the best, to not be in the top sets, to be considered average was horrifying to me. I don't know why that I pushed so hard and kept going, and actually made myself very sick in my sort of 14, 15 years of age, because I had end of year exams coming up, got in such a state. I got really ill with glandular fever, completely self-imposed levels of stress. Nobody at home was telling me I had to be the best. Where did that come from? That external validation, that being as good as you can be, to be told what a good girl you are. I mean, oh God, that's exhausting. Yeah. Letting go of that is
a huge freedom, very liberating.
Which I'm conscious, I actually only have 3 questions set for this podcast, and that brings us nicely to the second, which is, what is something you consistently have to free yourself from, even now?
I think it is external validation. I sort of get disappointed in myself that I still look for it.
Which is a lovely guilt shame trap in itself.
Yeah. I see it comes back to this bit of me that I don't understand about myself, the bit that got myself up on stage in doing a performing arts degree when it felt like it was the last thing I really wanted to do. And I still do. I stand up in front of groups of people and I talk about a subject that I'm passionate about and that I know a lot about. So there is a confidence in that, but there's also a scrutiny, and there's also a potential to fail in some way, shape or form. I could say something stupid or not be able to answer a question, or all these things. Humiliation is terrifying to me. And yet I still do it. But I think what drives me to do it, and I will get back to your question in just a moment, is because then I'm told, gosh, you're good at that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, you're such a good speaker. Oh my gosh, you know so much. How do you remember all that? And I sort of puff myself up and feel all good about myself because I know that about myself. It's not enough. I need somebody else to tell me that. So I want to be able to not care. But if we look at sort of evolutionary psychology, it was important to care.
I was about to go exactly
we needed
there.
to.
Yeah.
We needed to have our tribe going, come on.
Yeah.
And I have grown up and I was acutely aware of this, and now I accept it and I quite like it about myself, but it was painful growing up. I am so an outsider looking in. I like, what have they got that I don't have? How do they know how to do that social thing? Because I am clueless. And if I'm going to be social, it's all going to be an act, because that is not my natural way of being.
Yeah.
I would never have survived as a hunter-gatherer, because I would have been on my own trying to feed myself and protect myself, and I wouldn't have had a tribe, because I don't know how to belong to tribes. And
As you were speaking, I was thinking that I completely resonate with this. I find myself on the peripheries of most friendship groups I'm in. It's not that I'm peripheral, but there are the core group are really loud,
really tight,
together.
Yeah.
And yes, you're part of the solar system, but a distant part.
But you're choosing to be a distant part.
I don't think it was always a choice. I think it's just the natural. I kind of gravitate to that place. But also I've been dealing with this external validation piece as well. And given that this podcast is called Hands Up If You're Human, I've come to believe or think or whatever it might be that actually that external validation is important for exactly the reasons you speak about. It's, well, actually there's value, you're adding value to a group. And fine, we've evolved past the need necessarily. Yet that old wiring is still there. So actually finding a happy medium where we can feel puffed up and then not feel a kind of deep shame for really liking it, and at the same time have an element of self-validation, that we're not entirely dependent on other people. It's nice to have, and it's almost like going in the right direction. I'm gravitating to people I should be gravitating to. Forgive my use of the word should, but I think that's where I'm getting to. Is, you said earlier about nice people, you spend time with nice people who demonstrate their humanity and their kindness and all that, because that's who you are. I think that's where I'm getting with the external validation as well. It's like, it's okay if loads of people hate me. Can't imagine why they would, but if they do, that's cool, because they're not my people. There are people who validate me. That's okay. And I'm working on self-validation. I say working on it because it's difficult.
It's difficult. There is a saying going around, something like the worst addiction is the need for external validation, or other people's approval.
Yeah.
The worst addiction is needing other people's approval. It's different. That's different.
Yes.
Because approval is different, but it is that sense of sort of knowing yourself, knowing where you fit, being okay with all of that, taking some of it externally, like, yeah, come and join the club, and it being a conscious choice about how much we do of all of that. It's also about letting go of the idea that more is better when it comes to more friends, more social engagements. It's about the quality of them.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm in a very comfortable place with that.
It's and especially with validation, I have a saying I live by, which is choose wisely those you allow to shape your perspective of yourself.
Yeah.
Because external validation for me is important, but it is not all equal.
Yeah, nice.
There is a very, very tight group, small group of people who it's important if they say it. Having it from
that's a
broader
good
group
point.
is not.
Yes.
It's just not.
One thing I have noticed over the last few years, I'm aware. Is I have been told, it's been written to me that I have inspired people. That I'll take that.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's not my intention when I go out and talk or meet with people and do various things that I do, but that someone goes away inspired to learn something or look up something or change something, that I like.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah, that's a very nice, healthy validation.
Yeah.
Unless you're inspiring them to do terrible things, which I can't.
Well, true.
I can't imagine you are.
I try not to do that. Yeah.
Keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. I am conscious of time.
Yeah.
So 2 more questions.
Yes.
What are you currently creating freedom to?
Don't know if I have an answer for that.
It's okay if you don't.
Oh, I think just letting go of the rules a bit more. My own rules. Being a bit more forgiving of myself. A good example, I donate blood regularly. Again, that makes me feel very virtuous. And I just have to save so many lives. And yet I have rules around my training, which is ironic when I say I've moved on from the time when I was so rigid with my sort of expectations of diet and exercise, but I have a much more gentle protocol. It's a protocol nonetheless. So I gave blood. Now fast approaching 60, my body doesn't recover like it did in my 20s when I used to give blood. And I know that and I feel it. And yet, could I let go of my Monday morning workout when every bit of my body said, you're down on red blood cells, your iron is low, your body is tired, it's hurting right now. You know the physiology, recovery is as important as exercise.
Yeah.
Why the hell can't you take Monday off? No. Rules is rules. So that's probably where I'm looking to be more gentle, forgiving.
Yeah.
And again, getting out of the head.
Yeah.
Getting into the body. My body knows best, and I still bloody battle with it. And it's ridiculous, but I am still doing that. But at least I'm aware. Yeah.
And it's okay to have these seemingly contradictory things. They go, well, I know this and I'm still behaving in this way. It is that awareness and constant practice of being human.
and I'm okay, duh. It's okay.
It doesn't mean anything
with that.
bad about you as a human being.
No.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And what is one thing? No, I hate that question. What is something someone can do if they are feeling lost, trapped, or in need of more freedom?
Be kind to yourself, and that will mean different things to different people. And one way to be kind to yourself, and this brings us right back to the beginning, is to notice your thoughts. because so often it's such a familiar set of words, conditions, judgments going on that we don't even question where they came from. Are they serving any purpose? And are they actually true anymore? Or were they ever? So to just stop, notice, and maybe let go or change some of that deeply ingrained thought process that you've been living with forever, that is just holding you back.
Nice. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find out about you, connect with you? We mentioned 2 books that you've written. Where can people find the world of Stephanie here?
Quickly on the first book, written very much on the back of my experience of eating my way out of being a diabetic and becoming healthy again.
Yeah. Okay, so
railing against the concept of why eating less and exercising more makes you fat. Hence the title, bit clunky, bit long. Not a bestseller.
But you mentioned diabetes, type 2 diabetes.
Yes.
You are no longer.
Oh, absolutely not. No, far from. That book is being updated and rewritten and will be called Eat Your Body Lean.
Okay.
Hopefully by the end of this year. Anyway, that book is still available. And my new book, Eat Your Brain Happy, both available on Amazon and anywhere you buy books. I have a website called health-in-hand.com where you can find out about all the things I do, including canine nutrition and group talks and one-to-one sessions. And then through Gritted Teeth Instagram, which is Health in Hand UK. There are a lot of videos there that come from my work that I do with Goodwood and various other people or organizations where I give talks. So you'll see bits of me doing bits of that. Thank you, Wynda.
You're very welcome. I will put all of the links into the show notes.
Thank you.
So that it is available for people. Steph, thank you so much.
It's been fun. What a way to spend a Monday morning.
I love these conversations. And the way you talk about this enormously complex topic, but in a way that's like, yes, there's complexity going on behind it, but there's some simple stuff here. This is all good. I think is enormously beneficial, especially for those, I guess, a little bit like us who are fixated on the understanding.
Yeah.
And that can prevent, it's so vast that it would have prevented me even approaching it. So highly recommend everybody goes and checks Steph out, checks out her books. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you have enjoyed this episode or any of the other episodes, please like, subscribe, leave a review. I would love to hear what you're making of these episodes. I'm enjoying them enormously, learning huge amounts and taking away bits and pieces I can add to my own processes. So if you'd like to get in touch with the show, please email handsupifyou'rehuman@gmail.com. Subscribe, share. I think I've said all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for listening. We have, I think, can't remember whether we have at least one more episode coming once this one has gone out. So stay tuned. And until next time, I wish you a peaceful and joyful few days, and I will speak to you soon. Thank you.